Hi, my name is Laura, and I'm a director on the Internal Learning and Innovation team within OWLS. I'm going to talk with you today about PDSAs. So the traditional way that we make change in education, and often in the world as a whole, is that we have an idea for change, do lots and lots of detailed planning, spend tons of time, money, energy, and resources making our vision a reality. And we implement changes, hoping for reliability at scale. An example that I've lived through is a district choosing a new curriculum, perhaps by hiring a few folks to vet all of the various curriculum, and training, after the one has been chosen, training all of the teachers in the district and rolling it out district-wide. We hope for reliability at scale, but we haven't set ourselves up for that. Sometimes we get lucky, but oftentimes we end up with failures that we don't understand. In improvement science, we work to utilize a tool and process called the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle, PDSA. At its essence, it's a scientific method put into practice. What the PDSA provides is a structure to guide and discipline the experimentation and to capture what we learn for the benefit both of ourselves and for others. It helps us go slowly, learn a lot, and build up to quality with reliability at scale. So the first thing you need to know about the PDSA cycle is that you're going to start with a very clear change idea that you'd like to test. Basically, what you're going to do is run a mini experiment on the change idea. The first part of the PDSA is the plan section. This is where you very clearly articulate what the change is that you're about to test. You develop a plan to conduct the test, usually when and where the test will occur, who's going to be involved. And then you say what your predictions are. What do you think will happen when you enact this change in the real world? Then you move on to the do portion of the PDSA. This is where you execute the test. You collect data, document any interesting observations that come up along the way, and then you study. You compare the results you got to your predictions and figure out what you learned. Finally comes the act section. This is where you decide what to do next based on what you've learned. There's three common directions people tend to go during the act portion. They decide to adopt the change, meaning they have enough confidence in the change at this point that they'd like to make it a permanent part of their practice. Or they might desire to adapt the change, revise it based on what they've learned and test it again. Or they might decide that the change isn't promising enough to continue pursuing, and they decide to abandon it and move on to something else. What you decide in the act section feeds into the next plan in your next cycle. So one point I like to make about the plan section is that it is so important to articulate your predictions. By doing this, you're making your theories, assumptions, and hypotheses about the world and how it works explicit. And that's really critical because later in the study section, you're going to compare your results to those predictions. And that's what reveals your gaps in understanding. We often learn the most when our results actually don't match our predictions. And it's that gap that illustrates where our mental models or our theories about the world were incomplete or inaccurate. And I know from my personal experience, at least, it can be very tempting at the end of the PDSA cycle to tell yourself, yep, I believed that all along. But if you put your predictions down on paper before you run the test, you're much more likely to uncover those places where you believed or what you believed doesn't actually match what you just learned. We often get a lot of questions about how long the PDSA should be, and the answer can be minutes, hours, or days. If it's much longer than that, we say that you should be asking yourself, how else might you be able to test this idea and this change? In our incubators, we've utilized PDSA cycles with the participants to provide them with a structure to test out what we call their death threats, or things that could make their idea fail early on. This allows folks to make adjustments or determine the solution isn't actually worth pursuing early on, before we have too much time, money, or energy invested. This is particularly helpful when we're taking on new innovations, as it's often hard to know how a new product or process will fit into an existing system when it's never been tried before. So with PDSA cycles, we learn as much as we can, as early as we can.